right West star 6. Volume up. Volume down. Right space. Right ear. Left ear. Terrain instrument number 1. Terrain instrument 2. Terrain instrument 3. Terrain instrument 4.
Composers have always been interested in nature as a source of musical inspiration. Vivaldi, Beethoven, Wagner, all used the orchestra to imitate sounds which you might be able to hear if you were standing alone in a field. Sounds of birds singing, or of wind, or lightning, or thunder. Our next artist uses nature itself to give us musical sounds. He built his own instruments to pick up sounds which the human ear normally would not be able to hear. If you stand in the middle of a snowstorm with a microphone, you'll hear this, the sound of wind blowing through the trees. But if you connect wire between the trees, add some transducers, and feed these through an amplifier, you'll hear the internal sounds of nature.
I think at the heart of my motivation in working with nature is that I really believe that an orchestra of nature exists. There's no notation system required. There's just a lot of patience and a little bit of electronics to amplify it and to turn up that orchestra. The sounds that are produced from the terrain instruments, that is the physical instruments themselves, are probably pretty close to any of the stringed instruments that you can come up with. The only thing is that there's no bow that activates them, it's the wind. I'm working now on a solo for cottonwood that would be mixed in with a babbling brook. So when the brook, the trees, the atmosphere, the tremuling ground, the whole forest is tuned up like an orchestra. It's asking that the ears probably flush themselves clean and listen for the first time to a forest orchestra. Everyone's familiar with the wind. Everyone's familiar with the rustle of the leaves, but the sounds I'm talking about of the individual solos for the forest orchestra has to do with internal sounds that would complement the visual. You can see leaves rattling, you can hear those, but also in this orchestra you'd hear the moan and groan of the sap and the other qualities that give the tree an emphasis as an orchestral element. This is a recording of a giant maple leaf that's hung on this wire that's 300 feet long. I sat there and watched this leaf being jostled by the wind and finally earning its freedom and taking off down the wire and just bah.
man makes strange music. Leif Brush is more an artist of sound than an everyday musician. His instruments are weird-looking wire contraptions hanging between trees and stuck in the ground near his home. And the performers in his all-natural orchestra include leaves and tree limbs and insects and anything that vibrates. Leif Brush's sensitive electronic sensors catch the caress of a mosquito wing. The webs whine as the spider walks around. And in this electronically bugged birdhouse, he hears a certain swallow's solos. Leif catches subtle natural tremors we can't hear or see with the help of a transducer. Transducers translate tiny vibrations too weak to make sound waves into frequencies we can hear. He monitors the mix of chirps and squeaks and twangs and clatters he picks up in a special research studio. He and the world are making music together.
And I thought that since there is an important sense that we haven't fully explored, that we can get a different kind of vision being inspired by internal natural sounds.
Brush is a little obsessed by the truth that things happen in the world that we can't detect with our senses. Things slip past our eyes, ears, touch, and taste that Leif regrets are gone. He'd like to hear a web whining as a spider makes a move, ants dance, a mosquito land on a limb. To catch as many natural vibrations as he can, Leif Brush has wired the woods near his home for sound. Here, an electronic gadget, a transducer, translates vibrations too tiny to make sound waves into frequencies we can hear. And hear strange instruments of his own invention. Listen as leaves fall or grass blades blow in the wind. Sometimes a storm slashes these trees.
In a measly kind of a thunderstorm, I wouldn't come out of the house to record. No. But there's some that would tip me off to say, this is going to be a good one. You better get them turned on.
This is called a signal disc, and it can record the impact of a snowflake or the skittering of a leaf. This so-called snow pixel hears the whoosh of passing snowflakes. Other instruments can plug into a branch, a trunk, or a root. And Leif listens to them all here in a nearby research studio. If he had his way, he says, he would wire a whole forest on a fine fall day like this. As it is, he edits to get the effect of every fall leaf snapping free, each robin chewing on a cherry pit. Leif Brush is beginning to connect environments all over the world by satellite. He'd like to mix, say, snake bellies slithering in a Georgia swamp with wind in the Australian desert. He soon will be able to do it.
When you were a kid, did you ever put your ear on the ground to try to hear sounds?
I kind of feel like Tonto. I hear horses, Kimosabe.
But what this illustrates is that there is really a whole world of sound out there that we don't normally hear. Well, tonight we're going to meet a Duluth area artist who has found a unique way to capture the sound that is normally inaudible to us. And what he's found out is that Mother Nature is a pretty fine musician. If you've ever listened to the waves washing on a shore or to the wind whistling through the trees, then you know that Mother Nature is a pretty accomplished musician. No one could agree more than Leif Brush. Leif is an art professor at the University of Minnesota in Duluth, but at home, he is conductor of the Leif Brush Backyard Symphony Orchestra. The musicians include a 60-year-old white birch tree and a large Douglas fir, plus a smattering of leaves, rain, and wind, and anything else that Mother Nature has to offer.
This is the tree sway. It can be played with leaves very gingerly, very carefully.
Through a system of wires, strings, nuts and bolts, and electronic gadgets, Leif extracts sounds from the woods unlike any you've probably ever heard. minute sounds, inaudible to the human ear, amplified thousands of times over. Leif was a radio announcer for a while, but felt that it wasn't allowing him to approach the heart of his interest in sound. So he began to search for new ways to listen. The tree harp was his answer.
Now, what are you doing there?
Well, first I got to shake when it stays over the winter, I have to shake all the bugs out. Usually, see, there's one that stayed in over
You're
winter.
But literally there are bugs in
Yeah, and I got to check to see how these channels are, but they're pretty clean. The sounding boards sandwich and hug the this 50-year-old birch tree, and when it sways, you get the moaning and groaning of the birch tree, as well as the interaction of the breezes on the strands themselves. I came into the whole sound research thinking that there would be a great deal of difference between tree to tree, but a 60-year-old Douglas fir sounds a little bit like this birch. But if I get into the limbs and the leaves, the root system, then I begin to add additional color, and the birch and the Douglas fir, I'd sound different.
Now, what do people whose professions are in the music field think of the natural symphony? Tavo Verkhaus is conductor of the Duluth Superior Symphony Orchestra.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, if I had no idea at all what this would be, I would say this is a composition by someone like Toru Takamitsu, or something that John Cage has come up with recently, or in a similar vein.
What would you say if I was to tell you that these were sounds that were monitored from a birch tree in somebody's backyard?
Well, I could understand how this would be worked, because basically this is what we would term in music the aleatoric music. Alea meaning, basically it means chance. Composers have been influenced by natural sounds, let's say like Beethoven in his Pastoral Symphony. The flute plays one bird part, and then there's a cuckoo, which is clarinet. This idea is we taking the sounds as they are. It's very fascinating.
Pat Pacella is a local disc jockey.
All of these sounds were monitored from a birch tree and amplified thousands of times over.
Oh, hard to believe you could pick up those sounds like that. A vacuum cleaner can't even pick up dirt. That's phenomenal. Hey, I always thought I had a quiet backyard.
What do you think of it?
It's interesting, and it's remarkable that you can pick up those sounds. Something that is kind of undetected from the human ear.
Think it would make the top 40?
It sounds like something from the back 40.
Let's get a little higher.
Higher?
Now, Mother Nature didn't provide us with all of the elements that day, so we improvised a bit.
How'd I do?
Okay, let me try a couple dribbles, and
Oh, I like that. You do a much better job than I do. But I suppose with practice I could...
yeah, that gives you a good idea now. A nice gentle rain.
That's
I like that. A concert for a rain bucket. Wow, that's kind of heavy.
Coming up this fall, Leif will share his rain and leaves and his birch tree with the whole world. He plans on broadcasting his backyard symphony to the Hudson River Museum in New York City, where it will be blended by computer with several other instruments, and then picked up by satellite and beamed to Paris, France. A man and his birch tree heard around the world.
I try to listen to the wind with ears, instruments, and trees. When you think of the wind occurring at different times of the year, it may be predictable what kind of sounds are available from the terrain instruments or from the trees. The sounds that are wind stirred. June may be calmed compared to October, and certain aspects of physical nature are predictable. While the wind and its potential for imaging has and plays an important part in the playing of these terrain instruments. I developed an interest in exploring sounds, and on this particular lithograph I did a lot of special drawing. This happens to show a hexagram which I conceived there would be 500, which would fly at different heights over the state of Illinois, making various layer recordings. And then later on, as depicted in this particular lithograph, where there is one hexagram on the left there, hovering over, in this case, the Baffin Islands, that was our goal. Then we were to assemble all 500 over the Baffin Islands in northern Canada and play back Illinois over this lithographic landscape. While we were waiting for the other hexagrams to join us, we had the capability of changing the color of the cold front here that you see, and then we had an additional capability to color the clouds green. The characteristics in my work seek to develop sounds based upon the 200 or so voltages I have found in nature, sensed from trees, terrain instruments, and natural dynamics. I'm trying to image the wind, in other words, seeing the wind, and being guided in imaging where sound with its inherent potential, is capable of giving up its own image. I'm not so much interested in achieving the moods from nature, which can very easily be achieved by simply putting 4 or 5 microphones over a brook that may have the sound of water and some toads and fish splashing around. What I'd like to do is probe very directly into the movements of trees and the other vibrations that are caused by wind stirring the trees. In other words, accessing the image source and the sound source directly from the dynamics of nature.